CS Mary Wangari Wamae, CEO of TVG Consulting and Leadership Group, will be making a presentation on ethical leadership and good governance, restoring trust, renewing morals, and securing the future. CS Mary, I think to many, does not really need much of an introduction, but I will read her profile. CS Mary Wamae is a seasoned legal and corporate governance professional with over 14 years in private practice and extensive executive experience at Equity Group, where she served as Group Chief Executive Director until June 2024. She has a master's in leading innovation and change from York St. John University and is an advocate of the High Court of Kenya. Mary is a recipient of the 2021 Angaza Award, and the Women on Boards Award recognized her for her exemplary leadership in banking, finance, and gender inclusion. Mary is also the host of the very popular podcast, The Executive Table, and also the author of The Village Girl, I hope we've all read that book, a book that really brought a lot of insights on leadership and transition from private sector, public sector, and into leadership. So I don't want to take much of time. I want to allow Mary to come in and make her presentation. Welcome. Let's give her a round of applause as she walks in. Karibu sana.
Thank you, Judy. I hear they call this the graveyard shift. True or false? So, but we are not dead yet. We are still alive and kicking. Yeah? So, we'll be okay at the end of the session. So, thank you so much, the board of the Institute and the management for having me, and also the members for listening. So I was asked to talk about, it's the main theme, so I'll probably just give my views about the theme that has been running from yesterday on ethical leadership, good governance, restoring trust, renewing morals, securing the future. I have 16 slides, which I know you can get after this. And because of pressure of time, I will just highlight a few slides, and then you can get the others at your own time after the presentation is done. So now, I'm struggling with. Okay. So I think a lot of the people are in the public sector, but we also have a lot of people from the private sector. So I'll try to have a hybrid and a message that resonates on all sides, because I believe the principles are the same. When we talk about ethical leadership, whether you are in private sector, whether you are in public sector, or even those who are in their own private enterprises, maybe startups, or they're doing entrepreneurship here and there, it still applies. So I hope the principles will resonate with everybody in the room. I'll not go into the definition of ethical leadership because this has been covered quite substantially in previous presentations. But I think what I want you to note now is that there's a huge element of what you can see here in this circle. These are the main components, the main pillars. And the first one is the values. What values do you stand by as a leader? Because I do believe that this starts with me. Let's ask ourselves, even when we are questioning our institutions, the institutions are run by us. So, what values do I, as a professional, subscribe to? That's where it starts. And then you start yourself, what supports the renewal? What communication supports the renewal of those values? And then, of course, how do those values translate into service? Kama we ni chairman, if you are a CEO, if you are a startup owner, whatever you are the company secretary or whatever other executive role, how do I translate those values into service to the community? That is also very important. And then we also ask ourselves, the voice. What is the vision, first of all? What should be the vision of a successful ethical leader? And then you must ask ourselves, because we all have followers, kama ni moja or there are 2 or thousands of followers as leaders, how do we translate that into a voice that communicates adequately our vision and our values to those that we lead? And by the way, this is not just confined to the professional capacities that we are carrying today. It also translates into our roles in other capacities as family members, leaders of the families. We must communicate our values with a voice that our children and our family members will relate with. And that is where we also, the day you know that you are doing a good job on values, is when your children stand up to you and ask you, why did you do that, Dad? Why did you do that, Mom? You had told us this and this. That is the day you know your message has got home. And then we talked in the previous session with SC Kanjama a lot about public participation. And my view is that politics come to play when you are communicating your organization's vision. And you must allow that because people must be able to ask you questions. Why are you thinking that way? Where does that leave us? If it's a private company, where does that leave the customer? If it's the government or a public institution, where does that leave the consumers of the service that you are providing? So that is very, very important and expected. So note the main principles. It is respect. All communication must be very respectful. Honesty. Are you honest? Can you stand the test of time? Or, you are saying, and then tomorrow, you've even forgotten. You've told too many lies. Tomorrow, you cannot remember what you said yesterday. That's what happens when you are not honest. Fairness. Are you fair? As a leader, sometimes you have to do very unpopular acts and make very unpopular decisions. It's part of leadership. And it's part of our profession. But do we do that with utmost fairness and justice? The other question is, where does equality come in? Are you upholding the principles of equality? Because that goes with justice and morality. And then, of course, we have talked a lot about accountability throughout all the previous sessions. Look at where that comes into your day-to-day decisions. Because once you do all those, that's when you develop the trust that is required in your followers. And we'll shortly later on look at who the stakeholders are, the wider definition of stakeholders. And we don't want to go into who is policing that, because I said it starts from you. But the regulators, the boards, the AGMs, shareholders, they will come in to policy or to police what you are doing. And they will ask you questions, which you must answer. You are answerable. But that's where it's important for you to do it, because it is the right thing to do. So here we also have a few other items, and I want to skip that because it's just an elaboration of the previous slide, and time is not on our side. And then we have talked about the benefits of good governance. I don't want to go through that. I want to highlight one case, and I know you have seen it in one forum or another, but I think this is a case study that we need to keep on thinking about every day. How does somebody transform a third world country into a first world country within a lifetime? That is what happened to Singapore. And we always say that we do not need to reinvent the wheel. We have talked about all the issues we are facing as a country. And there's so much desperation. But here, it only took one person as the Prime Minister to turn around the fortunes of that country. And that is why we say that governance plays a key role in the development of any country. With good governance, it is possible for a small country like Singapore to develop effectively, but without good governance, however, countries that have a lot of resources will remain third world, and they will not succeed. And we have a lot of cases, even in our own continent and elsewhere, where you have vast mineral resources, rich country by any standards. Actually, you just want to imagine if those resources were well governed, how far that country would be, and how far this continent will be by extension. But it has not happened. Why? Because there are principles of meritocracy. Who gets to do the job? Or who gets to get the job? There are principles of racial and religious harmony. There's infighting all the time. Every time we're asking, who has been appointed? Who are they? Where are they from? Which part of the country? Or which part of the continent? And I do agree that diversity and inclusiveness is okay, but that cannot override the need for meritocracy. How clean are we in our organizations? Are we doing clean management or clean government for that matter? Are we following the rule of law every day in our policies and in their execution? Are we caring for the environment? I think we talked a lot about ESG earlier. It is something we cannot overemphasize. So now, I have just 2-3 minutes video. I hope the sound guys can. Can you hear the volume? Did you hear the three decisions? Yes. So there's no way we can build this country unless we establish that firm foundation on principles. And then we grow our intellectual capital. They are saying they export intellectual capital to the rest of the world. And yet this is such a small, I mean, you can go around Singapore in, I think, an hour. It's very tiny. But they have distinguished themselves. They have one of the fastest ports and airport clearance in the world. That tiny country that was a third world when we became independence. So we don't need to reinvent the wheel. Let's learn the lessons. And of course, the issue of corruption comes again. How do we deal with that? But I think also one of the things he touched on, and that also made me think about our private and public institutions, is the issue of succession. How do we create the succession for our roles at whatever level in our institutions so that everybody is doing what they need to do, and separation of powers? It's important for us to think about those things. But we also have lessons from those who failed in governance and the results. We all remember this, at least those who are, the Gen Zs in the room. You maybe were not there, but I'm sure you read about them. But it happened in real life. When governance fails, it is chaos. And this has happened in very many countries, and it continues to happen. That is the result of failure. So here I have a few suggestions on how to tackle the issues. I'll not go through them one by one because of time, so you can actually look at them. SC, you can see here we've talked about Vivitech, for political funding and spend, Vivitech for public participation. We cannot ignore the issue of technology, especially now, because it will remove the cost and maybe also give the process a lot of transparency and then the trust of the public and credibility. So in all the areas, I think use of tech will be necessary. So whether we're using a hybrid or a fully digitized system, I think we really need to seriously think about what that can do to our country. I think we all remember the time when we used to go to Kenya Power to pay our bills in a queue. It's not too long ago. But what has happened now? Our lives changed. Because now I don't need to go anywhere to pay my bills. It's the same principle. Very simple. It just makes our lives easy. And all of us are happy. Now, I'll just quickly talk about this slide so that we can put everything into the context of how the best breed of ethical practices, ethical leadership, and how they meet. And how you interact, the internal environment and the external environment. Because there's an element of external forces that we have no control over. And this applies to everybody, private, public, wherever you are, whatever size of the business or the organization. But I must also say that, as we said earlier, when we give ourselves a purpose, and we identify what our purpose is. So if you are a public servant, why do you report to your office every day? Why did you even get that appointment? Why did you accept? You must define your purpose. And then, of course, think about, is that how authentic are you? How practical are you in achieving that? Are you taking all the right steps to achieve your purpose? And then, are you able to inspire your stakeholders to work with you? This is so important, because then what happens is, even when there are challenges, your stakeholders will understand and work with you and deal with those challenges because they trust you and they understand your purpose because you have communicated it very well to them. Now, we say that trust is the ultimate human currency. Trust is the ultimate human currency. Do I trust you as my leader? Do I not trust you as my leader? If I do not trust you, or if I don't trust the process, the transparency of the process, there's a big problem. Because it does not matter what I say. You will not listen to me. You just say, that one, that's talk. That's the way they talk. We must get to a level where our followers trust us and trust what we say. Because then they will support what we tell them to do. And that is why we have the structures. We have the boards, state corporations, private companies. We all have those structures. There's the legal and regulatory framework, the regulators, to just make sure that the guidelines are there, they are clear, and everybody is following the guidelines. Also, there's a level playing field. But then there's also the organizational hierarchy, and everybody knows their position. And everybody supports each other. Yesterday, someone talked about teamwork. The MD, the chairman, the CEO, the director cannot perform if everybody else is not supporting them. Because you need many hands to deliver, many cooks in the kitchen. We have policies, procedures, and that's where also automation, digitization comes in, just to make things easy for everybody, including the consumers. And then we have transparency and accountability, key running theme, and monitoring and internal controls. All that is supposed to support our vision and our mission and the execution of our strategy. So if we have our strategy as to give the best world-class service to our consumers, then we are going to have policies and systems that allow us to do that in a very efficient and cost-effective way. And then here, I said earlier we'll talk about who your stakeholders are. Because so long as you remember you have stakeholders in your business or in your organization, then you will do the right thing. But let me first of all start with how the values system works. So you teach everybody the values. It could be integrity. It could be hard work. It could be teamwork. It could be unity of purpose. We are united and our common cause. And then what do? You establish that culture. The leader's biggest challenge and biggest role in the organization is to establish the culture of the organization. And people will say, here in this organization, we do not do that. Here in this organization, even the cashier at the counter will tell you, here, I don't get bribed to pay my job. I give service because you are paying for it. Or it's a free service, but I'm being paid to offer that service to you. Here, we don't take a bribe. Or we are not rude to customers. Or we don't say, I'll call you tomorrow when I can sort you out today. Because we care for you. That's a culture that you build, caring for your consumers and for your stakeholders. And then once you establish that culture, then you actually find that you have more employee engagement. Because people know they can come to you and they can also raise issues. And here I must also say that every organization must be thinking about how do you take feedback from your staff. Do they feel that their views are heard and addressed? And if they cannot be addressed, someone is at least looking at it. Do they feel that? Because that's the only reason they will do the right thing with passion. And then the other thing is satisfaction. The other person on the other end, how do they feel? Or are you one of those organizations where you say, oh, today I need to go to the land's office. Oh, I'm dreading the visit. Oh, I'll be taken round and round. Nothing will get resolved until I do something. And doing something, you know what I mean. And then ultimately, you deliver stakeholder value. It has to happen when you do those things. So depending on the kind of organization you are running, you have all these as your stakeholders. You could have suppliers, those who have supplied things to you. Now, for the government, I had there's a big issue on pending bills. So now here there are stakeholders who are not happy. They are not happy at all. And it happens even in private institutions. When we delay payments, processing, and someone has committed, borrowed a loan, to deliver these things. And then there are customers, the consumers. Let's call them consumers of the service. We have the employees, either way. We have the management team. They are also a stakeholder. We have the shareholders. Now, even if it's government, the shareholders are who? The citizens. Because this is our country. Now, these are the things that we need to deliver to those stakeholders. There's durability and value, financial value, communication, risk management. Earlier we talked about, am I safe? Is my data safe? That is risk management and providing value to our consumers. And they are feeling, with this provider, I am fine. I'm taken care of. Someone really is taking care of my interest somewhere, somehow. But we cannot do that until we establish this. The mission, the strategy, the communication, the culture, the organization, and the structures around that, and systems and processes, because that's how we deliver seamlessly to the market. So at your own time, you can look at this moral compass. These are all the moral choices we have. This is within our powers to do. Nobody can do this for you. You have to decide where you want to play. So you can either do this or not do it. It's a choice we always have as leaders. But now, we are also setting the tone at the top for everybody else in our organizations. The tone we set from the top is the one that percolates down the organization. All these guys here, you've heard that saying of, you are preaching water and, chairman, preaching water and drinking wine. So what will drinking soda. So what happens? So if we tell our people to drink water, in the evening they find us in a certain corner drinking the most expensive wine or something else, what will happen? Tomorrow? See, they also sneak. Yeah. We set the tone. Si hata mkubwa anafanya, even the boss. I found, kwanza now, that's a story for tomorrow, during the break time. We found the chairman. And I found, now, by the way, now it will be even spiced up. Even where you are and with who, So we have to set the right tone at the top as leaders. That is our biggest responsibilities. And actually, that is actually the most difficult part of leadership. Walking the talk. Let's walk the talk, guys. Here we have the code of ethics, and I'm not going to go through it because we've really run out of time. Again, the risk management culture that Nicholas talked about earlier. So here we have to emphasize the lines of defense that you need to create in your organization. And this is why we set systems for procurement, systems for addressing customer complaints, systems for internal controls and prevention of fraud. We have the audit departments in all the organizations, whether they are government or private. So these are the lines of defense, because remember, we operate through people. We don't do it ourselves. So if you are a good leader, the first thing you start doing is setting the right systems and processes for yourself and for your team, so that there's maker and checker. I used to be in the bank for 20 years, and one of the things we had to invest in is a robust core banking system where you have maker and checker ability. So I cannot approve that, like that $25 million Nicholas talked about as myself. It has to go through a process. Maybe that one will be like 5 or so approvals, because we are all human. Without systems and processes, we are bound either to be negligent, make mistakes, or be compromised. But if we are 5, then we cannot all be wrong. We'll check each other. So that is what we have to do. So look at your risk management culture, enterprise risk management, wherever you are, and is it robust enough? But more importantly, have you established the risk culture in your organization, whereby even the guy at the gate, the one who opens the gate for me, knows that I'm a risk manager. And this process I do, searching bags as people come in, registering them, it is supposed to help me also to prevent fraud. And it is also supposed to help that customer, because it's a security measure. They need to understand why they do things in a certain way and how it also protects them from any frauds and any danger. And once they understand that, they will be able to do that passionately. And also, they will whistle blow when somebody acts against the norms and the procedures required. That is what happens when people are engaged. Now, I just want to quickly talk about the boards, because for those who are chairpersons or even members of the boards, this is your role. And these are the risks that are there when you do not do things right. So, lack of confidentiality, conflicting agendas. Who sets the agenda? Where is the agenda set? By who? Lack of order. Have you seen some boards fighting? Literally, physically. How does that start? Why does it happen? Are we not able to talk? Have you seen people saying, I raised a point in the board, and the next moment I'm being called by somebody who is many miles away to ask me, why am I saying that? What is that? It's lack of what? Confidentiality and respect for the process. Hostile environments. Have you seen you raising an issue and chairman, people are looking at you, these ones of, tutakuona, we will see you, tutakusalimia. If they were Gen Zs. That is not okay, because as a board member, as a chairman, I need to stand and say, I don't agree with that position, and this is my reason. Whether you guys agree or not, I am entitled to my decision or my opinion. My opinion may not carry the day anyway, but I'm entitled anyway. And then there are those who do secret meetings. Secret meetings are held where? In the boardroom. No, where? In the bar? In the toilet. Why should you have secret meetings if you have nothing to hide? Why can't you put the agenda on the table for discussion? Or are you worried about the conflicting views? So it's not a resolution, so you cover up everything. Personal and political agendas. There are some discussions that will go on, and then you just know this one has to be passed because so-and-so has an interest that is not declared. Remember, you should declare if you have an interest in a matter. And then lack of trust. Lack of trust. Why don't we trust each other in the boardroom? Because all these things cannot happen if we trust each other as members. But it is because, remember, we talked about conflicting views, and then we are not bound by the same purpose. Each of us is pushing their own agenda. So there's a lot of conflict that happens in between. And then there are dominating members. Have you been in a boardroom where one person has to say everything? Every agenda. Chairman. They don't even actually wait for the chairman to give them permission. Chairman, I don't agree. And no one has asked you yet whether you agree or not. The debate is still going on. So you don't have to talk all the time and allow others to talk. They also have a view, an opinion. But then we also have that category of who will never talk. Those ones who never say anything in a board meeting or even in an executive management meeting. Why are you there then if you don't say anything? What's your view? You are not appointed to that position to keep quiet. You are supposed to advance the interest of the organization. So your view is important, and you are there because of a certain capability. So you are brought in because you have HR capability, legal, management, strategy, technology, whatever. That's why you are there. So when you keep quiet, you have done a lot of injustice, because also now these ones take over and then some issues are overlooked or not discussed at all. You lose some perspectives from those stakeholders that we talked about, because somebody in that meeting must be representing the issues of each of those stakeholders to the organization. Yeah, so now, because of those, what we call human frailties, now we suffer all this. I moved the slide. So we have distended boards. So it's just not functioning. And that's why you also find the fights happening. Because people feel like they're not being heard. They feel like, maybe now if I use my fist, the chairman will listen to me. That's what happens in some quarters. Because we are all human. But we also have conforming boards. Those will only rubber stamp decisions made elsewhere. And the board meeting takes like how long? I was in search, where the board meeting used to take only 30 minutes. And 30 minutes was actually to read the resolutions. And then the chairman would ask, any proposer? Seconder? Judy, you are seconding? Yes. Who is proposing? Joyce. Any opposition? No, actually they don't talk. Carried. Next resolution. Please, let's not be in those boards. It's a disservice to our stakeholders. Then you have the bystander boards. They are those ones who will never accept responsibility for anything. If the organization is not performing, who do you blame? Who do you blame? You blame the boss. Oh, the board. If you are the management. And if you are the management, if you are the board, you blame who? You blame the management. And when the two of you come together, you blame who? You blame who? These days we are blaming everyone. Who do we blame these days? The economy. The government. The economy. So there's always somebody to blame other than ourselves. So what happens then is that even the things that we are within our powers to redress, we do not redress them. Because we have passed the buck to somebody else. It's somebody else's fault. And that's how we see organizations and institutions decline and crumble down. We have bureaucratic boards. Those are the commas and the full stops boards. So those ones you just focus on, the rules, but they are not looking at the content and the ideas. We have the imbalanced boards that lack diversity. The diverse view is very important. And I'm so happy, Chairman, and the board, that we have now included even the young guys to come to the table so that they can start taking these responsibilities and understanding why it is important. And then finally, we have the subordinated boards who lack independence from the management team. So the word of the chairman is the word of the CEO, and vice versa. The board is supposed to provide oversight to the management. So at some point, there must be tension between the two. If you are always speaking the same voice, then there's a problem. Independence is lacking, and that is not okay. So I will stop there. I do apologize, we had to rush it through, but the presentation will be available. Anyone who would like to see it. And then we can continue the discussions maybe later on. Thank you, Chair of the session and the board.